From a young age, Ethan Monroe had always felt out of place. In a world where everyone seemed to be imitating someone else, following the same influencers, dressing the same way, chasing the same careers, Ethan was different. He didn't want to follow, he wanted to lead. But figuring out how to do that without stepping into someone else's shadow proved to be one of the greatest challenges of his life. Ethan grew up in a small town in Indiana. His father, a mechanic, spent long hours fixing cars in their family-owned shop. His mother, a school librarian, loved books more than anything. While his classmates idolized athletes and pop stars, Ethan was always drawn to inventors and thinkers, people who built their own paths instead of borrowing someone else's. In high school, he often felt like a misfit. When others copied their friends' hairstyles, slang, and even personalities, Ethan tried to find his own way of expressing himself. He played guitar but not the trendy songs. He dressed in a way that made sense to him, even if it meant being laughed at. He questioned things instead of following the crowd. And while this often made him feel alone, deep down he believed it was the right thing to do. One day, his economics teacher, Mr. Palmer, noticed Ethan's unique approach to class discussions. Instead of parroting ideas from the textbook or popular media, Ethan would raise thoughtful questions, connecting historical economic events to modern-day issues in unexpected ways. After class, Mr. Palmer pulled him aside. "Ethan," he said, "you see the world differently. That's not something to be ashamed of. It's your strength. Don't waste it trying to blend in." Those words stuck with Ethan like glue. When he graduated high school, he didn't follow the typical path. Most of his friends either went off to college or started working in their families' businesses. Ethan decided to take a gap year and explore his ideas. He traveled across nearby towns and cities, working odd jobs and observing people's behaviors and routines. He started jotting down notes in a brown leather journal. Ideas, thoughts, even sketches of inventions and businesses he thought might work. One of his earliest observations came while working at a coffee shop in Chicago. He noticed that while every cafe tried to mimic Starbucks or the latest trendy boutique, there was something robotic and soulless about them. Customers were treated like transactions. The music, the menu, the uniforms, all copied from a central mold. It struck him how little authenticity there was. He thought, what if someone opened a cafe that didn't copy a model? One where every element was built around real human connection. He didn't know it then, but that thought was the seed of something much greater. Returning home at the end of the year, Ethan felt more confident. He hadn't figured everything out, but he knew he didn't want to live by someone else's blueprint. He enrolled in a community college and took courses in business, design, and psychology, fields that might help him turn his ideas into something real. Instead of rushing, he focused on learning deeply. While other students copied answers or used AI tools to finish their assignments, Ethan challenged himself to truly understand the material. Around this time, he began developing the idea for his own cafe, The Nest. Unlike traditional places, The Nest would be a creative space where people could relax, talk, and connect. No Wi-Fi, no background pop music, no cookie-cutter decor. Instead, it would feature local musicians, homemade pastries, a book exchange corner, and conversation prompts at every table. Everyone he shared the idea with said the same thing. "That'll never work." People told him he was overthinking it, that customers wanted Wi-Fi and trends. But Ethan trusted his gut. He took part-time jobs and saved every dollar. He designed the space himself with help from his old art teacher, Ms. Collins. He sourced the furniture secondhand, choosing pieces that told a story rather than followed a style. By the time The Nest opened its doors, Ethan had poured 2 years of soul, sweat, and sacrifice into the project. The first few weeks were rough. Most people didn't understand the concept. Some walked out when they realized they couldn't browse Instagram while sipping coffee. But slowly, something incredible began to happen. Word spread that there was a little cafe that felt different. Artists began holding poetry readings. Local teachers hosted book discussions. Musicians came to perform on Friday nights. people started coming not just for the coffee but for the community. The Nest became a place where people unplugged and truly talked. Ethan knew he had tapped into something deeper than trends. He had built something authentic. Within a year, local newspapers were writing about the Nest as a hidden gem. A video someone made about the cafe went viral. Entrepreneurs started asking Ethan for advice on building a brand that felt personal instead of corporate. When a national coffee chain offered to buy the Nest and turn it into a franchise model, Ethan declined. He realized that scaling would dilute what made the cafe special in the first place. He didn't want to clone it. He wanted it to remain unique. Instead, Ethan launched a podcast called Build It Differently, where he interviewed other entrepreneurs, artists, and dreamers who chose not to copy the mainstream but to forge their own path. The podcast gained traction quickly, especially among young adults tired of comparison culture. Over time, Ethan became a mentor to many. But he always made one thing clear. You don't succeed by copying someone else's steps. You succeed by figuring out who you are, and building something only you could build. One of his most powerful episodes featured a young woman named Lily, who created a clothing brand out of upcycled materials. Like Ethan, she faced criticism for not copying fast fashion success formula. But her brand flourished because it resonated with people who valued authenticity and creativity. Their stories paralleled, and their conversation became one of the most downloaded episodes of the year. Ethan also spoke at high schools and colleges where he'd tell students, "You're not supposed to fit someone else's mold. You're supposed to shatter it and create your own." Years passed, and the Nest continued to thrive, not by changing to fit trends but by staying true to its original purpose. It became a model not of replication but of inspiration. Ethan never became a billionaire, but he achieved something far more valuable. He lived a life of purpose, fulfillment, and originality. He didn't have to copy anyone to find success. He discovered that real success comes from leaning into who you are, embracing your quirks, following your instincts, and building a path where there was none before. The most beautiful thing. People around him started doing the same. They began to ask not, "Who should I copy?" but "What can I create that's uniquely mine?" And in that shift, from imitation to inspiration, Ethan realized he had succeeded in the truest sense of the word.